I got my armor, as in my spiritual armor, which was the disciplina, a small whip made from strands of hemp woven into the shape of a small cat o' nine tails. That the silicio, so every two or three times a week, you kind of whipped yourself like that on the legs. I never exaggerated with this. Thank God I was not a masochist, but you whipped yourself in mortification, keep your passions, your dangerous passions under control. And then the silicio, or this cilice, a kind of mini hair shirt a la masochiste, was a 3-inch wire garter of thin wire spikes, one end tied with a shoelace. A touch of class said it had to be black, matching uh, matching our cassocks and sockets, to tie it snugly in place around the mid thigh. It was a sign of a wimp to limp too much, or to wear it so loose it fell off when you walked. Then you would have to bend down furtively and slip it into your pocket. It hurt when you knelt or bent down, and when you were sitting at table. That was to be worn from time you got up until after breakfast, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. At least I think that was my regimen. When that evening, in the twilight of his room, Father Aramis presented me with his arms, with my arms, as a Caballero de Cristo. I was a knight of Christ. The romantic part of me gallantly accepted this knighthood, and I continued to use it without comment or complaint for several years. Quick paragraph. Oops, daisy, we went off the tangent there, Paul. Apparently, I'm into a new one here, so this is probably going to be number 7. I'm going to hop along here because I apparently turned it off and then I turned it on. Uh, I just have a small paragraph on soccer as a means of perseverance. We were able to play soccer, and that was one of the saving graces. The constitutions and rules of the Legion contain a long and detailed section on means of perseverance, consisting for the most part on various forms of prayer and participation in confession, spiritual direction, and mass. Playing soccer is not included. There were long lists of rules of everything. Beside the constitutions, the rules, the official rules, which were about 300, then they were the norms of whatever it was, perseverance or something like that. And then there were the rules of courtesy, uh, good manners, etc., etc. They all came up to several hundred rules and regulations. I once wrote an article about this, which is on the ICSA website, and it did not survive a Legion purge, as in communist purge, but it somehow survived on the ICSA website to this very day, and I think it's called Rules and Regulations, or concerns about concerns about some aspects of the Legion of Christ. I hope they don't sue me again for this. Anyway, soccer was not included, but de facto, the beautiful game, Gioco Bonito, contributed in no uncertain manner to my surviving the novitiate and juniorate in the Legion of Christ. We novices frequently played soccer among ourselves on the hard dirt pitch with a worn, light, and hard to control ball. The Irish left winger strutted his stuff against Mexican companions such as Rosendo Silva, a nephew to nuestro padre, who after ordination went missing in action in El Paso, Texas, and Jose Barragan, who now is made a wonderful. He never ordained, but lovely person in Mexico, has a very good position. Now successful lawyer in Mexico. On feast days, together we competed against the humanities students and beat them most of the time because we had a starring football team. Recuerdos de Salamanca. This was the Washington Irving wrote a beautiful essay, I think, about what is it about uh, memories of the Alhambra. Then I talk about here I talk about the building in Salamanca, which, despite its lovely exterior, was actually attractive, was not well put together, we might say. And I go through certain problems it had. It had the floor tiles were never properly laid, so the silence of Holy Novitiate was constantly broken by the clip clop of feet, including the clumsy tripping of absent-minded novices, followed by the thud of a cassocked body hitting the deck. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but the baldosas, the the yes, the stones, the flagstones, excuse me, something like that. Um, Repairs were constantly, if not consistently, taking place. The cook, Paco, was the one who he was our bricklayer, and he and his friend Joaquin were in charge of doing those repairs to the floor. It was an ongoing. It was a what is it called? That a chronic problem. When Paco was not in the kitchen throwing together the horrible food, he was up on the floors playing bricklayer. Our small cubicles were in the center, leaving a wide passage between our curtains and the outer walls. Each novice had a small table set close to the window where we studied. On the top left corner lay a picture of Our Blessed Lady, and it actually was the head of Michelangelo's La Pietà, and another of the Pope, held in place by a crucifix. You could tell a professed religious's table by the larger crucifix brought from Rome compared to the skimpy novice crucifix. Clippity-clop floor was Paco's playroom. Our concentration was frequently shattered by piercing shouts of Paco to Joaquin. Joaquin! Más mezcla! Yeah, that's why I survived, I suppose, sense of humor. Joaquin, more mix, for God's sake! And then Joaquin would come shuffling along hurriedly in his flip-flops, apologetically exclaiming, I vengo! And Paco, hey, will you hurry up? The mix is getting hard. Heating system was another serious problem, even more painful than the floors. The radiators did not work, at least, or they were not put on. I don't know. Or they had to be bled. Some of the novices earned their place in heaven wielding monkey wrenches at all hours of the day and night, trying to keep the radiators warm. Rafael Barrientos, El Español, and Mexican Jesus Navarro Casillas, among others, cheerfully carried out this thankless task. Of course, they also gave them a break, from the religious routine. So they loved it. Just as the guy who was the official mechanic, probably Tarcisio Samaniego or some other person like that, they, they were out of it for hours in a day, and that probably helped them to keep their mental health. Uh, some of the Irish and Mexican brothers got serious chilblains during the first crude, snowy, freezing winter. Declan French from Waterford was affected, as was Octavio Acevedo, a hard-working, earnest, and docile, dark-skinned Mexican. Octavio would be my perennial. He was very docile to Father Maciel, and we were contemporaries. So he was my perennial superior in the Legion of Christ, and he was part of the cross I had to bear because he always had to do the dirty work that was coming down from on high. He had to give the dirty orders and the no-nos to my requests. Still alive, God bless Octavio. He's probably now part of the chapter general or something. God bless him. Even with mittens, ulcers broke out on the tops of their fingers. It took all my supernatural spirit to overcome my natural repulsion and treat those festering wounds with the limited resources at my disposal. One of the breaks from this very tight and controlling and painful uh, routine was the paseo, the excursion on Thursdays. Thursday is the special day. That's the day of the paseo outing. Hey, rain or shine, on Thursdays they made you get out of the college. After breakfast, we set out on our hikes. At the back kitchen door, our supplies were handed to us in brown paper bags. The lunch consisted of a small Spanish loaf or bocadillo containing a slab of straw-colored sweet quince, membrillo, and soft white Spanish cheese. During the hot months, for us Irish, this was hard to force through our parched throats after a 3-hour march in the blazing sun. We had our sparkling water, or gaseosa, to wash it down. This is very Spanish. Um, but there never seemed to be enough, as it was a blessing to find, and it was a blessing to find the spring along the way. A favorite destination during the dog days of summer was the Salamander Spring, where I spied my first salamander, a rather unattractive amphibian barely visible in the shadowy crevices of a narrow rock. God's creatures, great and small, would always be a source of consolation for me. Another favorite haunt was a cool copse of fruit trees named the wood of imprudence, el bosque de la imprudencia. I think we called it. Somebody called it. We were creative, because of the day a team of novices had been caught trespassing, and the angry owner screamed indignantly at the timid novices, "This is the height of impudence! How dare you!" After another cultural gem was encountering the Spanish Civil Guard on our hikes, mounted on their powerful dark horses, wearing blue uniforms, despite the incongruous black three-cornered hat. They inspired fear and respect. They seemed to look down on us lesser mortals on ground level, never sparing a word on us as they patrolled the roads. We walked in threes, they rode in twos. Did they have a code of silence like us? You're more foreboding when they don't speak to you. I derived some pleasure learning Spanish, or much pleasure, during my Salamanca sojourn. As beginners, we had a certain advantage when learning the modern Spanish style of short sentences modeled by Azorín, in contrast to traditional convoluted Spanish syntax with its subjunctive and tenses and all this kind of thing. Subordinate phrases, yes, exactly. Platero y Yo was a famous book. The deceptively simple narrative masterpiece by poet and writer Juan Ramón Jiménez about a man and his donkey called Platero was an obvious choice as our first Spanish reading book. My natural or learned modesty prevented me from realizing I had a certain gift, but I must have felt flattered when our teacher, Professor Serrano, the road, the Vespa, read a short story of mine in front of all the novices. It described this childhood episode. I described it in Spanish for my first essay. It described a childhood episode when, with trepidation, I had approached the Dominican convent in Cabra West one early morning to serve Mass in that hallowed precinct. And when I nervously knocked on the door to enter the convent, this very kind nun answered the door, and that took away all my fears. So, being this sensitive little guy, he answered the door. "Hello, are you here to help with Mass? Come in, little boy." Enough for now, because we've come to the end of chapter 5, and now we'll be in chapter 6, in retreating from the world. See you next time. Take good care of yourselves. Don't lose your sense of humor, because as Jacques Maritain said once, uh, in a preface to his book. Jamais prendre la bêtise trop en sérieux. This is for my French-speaking friends. And it means never take stupidity too seriously. Jamás tomar la estupidez demasiado en serio. Hasta la vista, amigos y amigas. And thanks for listening. Thank you for your kind feedback. As I say, hopefully this is it's informational, maybe also a little funny, but it's also hopefully healing and normalizing for especially those people who have been in contact with the Legion of Christ and the Regnum Christi movement. Take care.